Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. It's great to see everyone in person once again. I missed you all the past 2 years communicating through Teams, Zoom, phone call after phone call, through emails, but finally we're able to connect once again. So thank you for making it in. It's an honor once again to be able to serve this great city, and especially to be able to serve the Bureau of Accountancy as Deputy Controller yet once again under our new administration led by none other than Controller Brad Lander. And you'll hear from him shortly. But you know, it's one of those moments that you like take a look back and it's like, man, it's really been 2 years. But I definitely wanted to thank all of you, because while the city was shut down and we were all remote, and for the very first time trying to produce the financial statements from home, which we've never done before, you all have been so great. Your due diligence and, you know, meeting the deadlines, even without a seminar, you knew what to do. You called us and contacted us when you need to, and the great collaboration allowed us to once again produce the financial statements during a global pandemic. And that's never, ever happened before in the city of New York. So we appreciate you. I mean, you guys are the essential workers of the financial realm of the city. Without all of you, the services would not have been able to get delivered. You know, we wouldn't have been able to meet the needs of the public without all of you. It's the folks in the accounting and the purchasing office and the procurement and the contracting offices who allow the city to run and run smoothly. So thank you all again for all that you do. I want to take the time to recognize the team of FISA OPA, because I don't know about all of you, but when we were home, it was great that the every other Friday that said payday NYC did not change. And it's wonderful that the team of FISA OPA who did not go remote, they were in the office every day, making sure that the payroll cycles ran and the systems were up and running. So Neil Matthew, Executive Director, and our Director Greg Dollinger joining us today. Thank you all. Our bank accounts, thank you. Thank you so much. So I also want to take the time to just recognize Grant Thornton, because believe it or not, once we do what we need to do, right, in FMS, we run our reports, we're taking a look at everything. The financials cannot get issued without an audit opinion, and you can't get that clean audit opinion without the citywide audit being completed. And I want to say that the Grant Thornton team, who are the independent certified public accountants for the city, did an awesome job these past 2 years in allowing us to meet our deadline for producing the financials timely. And it could not have been done without them under the leadership and the partner, Marla Hummel, who unfortunately is unable to make it here today, and Nick Lazzarula, and we have Mike Ryan and Kyle Trooper joining us today. Come on, guys, stand up so they can see your smiling faces before they see your emails. This team of Grant Thornton is great to work with. And, you know, all of you, I hope you feel the same way once you start receiving your multiple emails asking you for selections and supporting documentation. But these are friendly auditors, so don't hit delete, don't ignore the emails. Remember these smiling faces you met here today. So without further ado, I am going to step aside, and I would like the Controller of the City of New York, Brad Lander, to just give a few remarks. Please welcome him.
Good morning. Let's give it up for the incredible Deputy Controller for Accountancy, Jackie Thompson, who really, you know, as I was saying to a couple of you earlier, my very first Deputy Controller meeting after I won the election, I was like, all right, let me sit down. You know, mostly you bring in your own new leadership team. And we have some great new leadership in the Controller's office. I'll introduce a few of them in a minute, but a lot of you know our Executive Deputy Controller for Finance and Budget, Francesco Brindisi. Say good morning to Francesco. Good morning. All right. So we brought in some new folks, but as I was going around and talking to people, like who is indispensable, it was made very clear to me from day one that Jackie, both in our office in the way that she leads the Bureau of Accountancy and brings a real spirit of service and energy and uplift to the whole office and to this essential process. So Jackie, thank you for continuing to do this really essential work. We'll do one more. Yeah. I want to thank everybody in this room. First, I want to thank you for coming in person, but also to the folks who are watching online. The set of people that are represented here today at this closing and accounting seminar are really fundamental. Yesterday, the mayor said, I'm mindful we're here at One Police Plaza, and thank you to Commissioner Sewell and to the NYPD for welcoming us. Yesterday, the mayor said, the folks that are heroes aren't the ones with S's on their chest. They're the ones with badges, the folks who keep us safe and are walking around in this building. And that is true. But I will also just say that the city does not keep running if we don't keep its books, if we don't manage its finances, then otherwise we can't make payroll every couple of weeks. We can't pay our contractors. What makes it possible for us to hire everybody in the city, from our police officers to our school teachers, to our firefighters, to the folks providing mental health counseling, to the staff at H&H during the pandemic, all of that runs through keeping the books right and making sure we know where the money is coming in and where it's going out. And that kind of accounting is the most fundamental trust in government. It's like both the basis for actually getting the work done, for being able to pay people to do it, and fundamental for the level of trust that's needed for the citizens of the city, for the taxpayers of this city to believe in the institution at all. And this is a time of very low trust in government. That's no secret to you. Probably a lot of you, even though you're doing the books, are wondering. And what's essential is to be able to show people that we're telling the truth, that we've taken good care of their money, that we know where it came in, that we know where it's going, that we can fully account for it, that we are spending it wisely. And that at its core comes from the annual comprehensive financial review. That's why I don't leave home without the annual consolidated financial review. I carry it around so I could show it to New Yorkers. Now, I'll admit I don't usually show them the award-winning but very heavy full statement. I usually bring the popular annual financial report version. And, last year's versions still both have Scott on the cover, and I still carry him around with me to show them to people. So, I got a lot of belief in what we're doing here. And I really mean that. It's easy when you're getting those emails asking for backup documentation, and when we're rushing to meet that deadline and bringing together such a big document across so many things that, okay, fair enough, not every New Yorker is going to get to schedule on page 391, to forget that unless we can do it, unless we can comply with the set of accounting standards, the rules we have in the city, and bring it all together, and be clear about where every dollar goes, you doubt the institution. Once it could not tell you that it could balance, that it could match, that it could really account for it all, very quickly your trust erodes. And you see that in the last few years with people asking questions about various programs and where the money went. And some people are never going to be satisfied, but when you can show people we got a clean audit, it's award-winning, I know the people that put it together, we really got there, that is the first building block of the trust in government that we must rebuild if we're going to have a city that can lean into saying, yeah, it's a shared project to educate our kids and keep our families and communities safe and make sure we're investing in the future and taking care of our elders, and on and on and on. And you really are, in my opinion, an essential part of the team of heroes that makes that possible, because it's a big, complicated enterprise, this city, and that basic fundamental level of what the ACFR does is really critical. A few more thank yous. A lot of the team of the Bureau of Accountancy are here. So in addition to Jackie, please say a welcome and thank you to our Bureau Chief, Katrina Stauffer. If you're just a member of the Bureau of Accountancy staff, will you raise your hands? We got a good chunk of the Bureau of Accountancy here down in the front row. So thank you to you guys. This really is a dynamite team. I have come to appreciate them in my few months in office, but like your work all the time to manage this information, to work with all these agencies and to knit it all together is really great. So thank you. As Jackie said, I want to, oh, and we also have some dynamite interns. They just came in this week on Monday, a lot of them from accounting programs at CUNY. I talked to people from Baruch, from Brooklyn College. Like, the future of the accounting profession is bright and diverse and energetic. So to our interns in the back and some out in the lobby, thank you guys. We're glad you're with us. We got a really strong community that you are joining, and we're so glad to have you here. Thank you again to our partners from Grant Thornton, from OMB, from FISA OPA, and of course to all the city agencies who are getting the work done. On our team, I also want to thank the folks from our Bureau of Information Systems and Technology, or BIST, and the Bureau of Administration, who helped put today together and will be essential partners and support throughout the process. And I'm excited also to introduce you today for the first time to our new Deputy Controller for Audits, Maura Hayes-Chaff, who you are going to hear from in a couple of minutes. And I think what you'll see there, Maura comes from the agency side, has been in the city's social service agencies for much of her career. So she knows what it's like when the controller's audit team comes and says, all right, we're coming for that next audit. And what I can tell you, what I was looking for in a deputy controller for audit, and what I think Maura really is bringing and working with our team from the Audit Bureau is a real spirit of how do we work together in the challenging project of making city government work better. Like, we all know it's got its challenges and its shortcomings and its problems, and they multiply. Right now, we're obviously struggling to fill vacancies and get people to keep coming into the office, and it's hard to hire people at this moment. And the pandemic opened up a whole other set of challenges on top of a ton of pre-existing challenges. Like, it is hard work to run any organization of 300,000 people, and especially one as kind of complicated as the city. And what we want to do in our role as auditor is, yes, of course, if there's a place that we suspect or we hear that there's genuinely fraud or abuse, then it's our job to drill down. But most of the audits are about how can we do things better? Like, what is not working here, either on the financial side or the management side, or the equity and inclusion side, or the sustainability side. And how do we make it work better? And we need to be partners in doing that. We got a job as auditors. There's a set of standards. We're going to be independent. We're going to look at things, work hard to tell the truth. But the goal is to be partners together, me and the mayor, our office and your offices, the city as a whole, to figure out a path to how we solve challenging public problems in government. And we are reaching out our hand to say, let's find good ways to do that together. We got a charter mandate. We're going to come in and do our jobs, but we're going to do it with a spirit of, let's think about how we solve hard problems and improve city government together. And we ask you to approach us in that spirit as well. I'm not going to pretend like that'll be easy every single time, but I promise you that is my goal. That is Maura's goal. That's our audit team's goal. And that's what we're going to be doing. Because if we get those results, I'm not, the other way gets maybe like a good one-day headline in a newspaper, but it doesn't actually produce results that save the city money, that help our services be provided more efficiently, that make our systems run better. And that really is the goal, is a set of things where the audit is done in a way that, really gives good, strong confidence in its recommendations and findings. And then all of us are committed to implementing them and making sure that they happen. So you're going to hear more from Maura. Thank you for that. As you guys know, the ACFR, as we now are calling it, is a ton of work. I recognize that you guys are going to be very busy, our team, all of your teams, over the next few months to get it done. We really appreciate that it's an extremely collaborative project. So thank you for approaching it that way. We're already doing a lot of good collaboration together on a whole bunch of projects. First Deputy Mayor Lorraine Grillo has convened a wonderful task force on capital projects and spending and reform to think about soup to nuts, how we make that process work better. And we're thinking about some of the things in our office on the contract side, on the engineering side, on the audit side, and on the accountancy side to think about how we can keep that system working in a way that's more consistent. Obviously, every year, if you're projecting you're going to spend much more than you wind up spending, something's wrong in your system when it takes so long. And then there's a whole set of questions about how those things find their way into the financials, and we're glad with that. We're collaborating with the Law Department's Workers' Compensation Division and with FISA OPA as well to figure out how we can offer EFT as an option for workers' comp complaints, for claimants, excuse me. It's hard to believe that a city of our size is still sending out checks to all those people instead of doing it by electronic funds transfer. And that's something we're working on. A lot of other projects together. I know our team is always working on implementing new GASB directives, some of which have impact on your agencies and some of which we mostly handle in our office. But none of that happens without a really strong spirit of collaboration. And that's what we're kicking off today. We got a good challenge to get this done on time this year, thankfully back in person. We know it cannot happen without the strong collaboration that we're kicking off in this room today. So thank you all so much for being here. Big extra thanks to our team and especially to Jackie for leading it. And good luck in the coming months. Thank you so much. Going back in the backpack, so I can carry it around some more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think that was a good segment into presenting Mara, Deputy Controller for Audit. And so you might be thinking, well, I thought this was for the close and accounting seminar. It is. But as you all know, for all of our repeat attendees, you know that each year we try to expand upon what we're bringing to you, right? Your work and what you do does not only get done in August, September, October, when we're doing the citywide audit, but it happens throughout the year. So we want to make sure that we're equipping you with what you need to get your job done and to get your teams in sync to bring forth better efficiency in what we're doing as a city. Because as we know, garbage in, garbage out, right? And we do not produce garbage when we produce the city's financial statements. So definitely, I'm really happy to welcome Deputy Controller Mara here today to talk to you a little bit and to just share her vision with you. And she has a great team that's joined her here today, but I pulled out some bullets from her resume just because I want to give you a little bit about who Mara is. In her roughly 14 years in serving the public, various city and state positions, including senior attorney hearings and litigations at the State Office of the Medicaid Inspector General, Assistant Deputy Commissioner, Medicaid Investigations and Audit, as well as Audit Services at Social Services for the city, and Executive Director of Audit and Compliance Services at DCAS. And finally, we are the lucky crew to be able to call Mara Controller's Office our own. And we're very happy to have her here today just to give you some insight on the new direction of this bureau. So please, I know when you receive that letter that says engagement letter for an audit, you all either crush it up or you're kicking the can like, oh man, they're coming in here again. And you're choosing that seat in the corner where they're by the door or by a closet, and just so they're not comfortable and they don't stay. But I promise you, Mara is bringing a new vision and change. So please welcome Mara Hayes-Chick.
So good morning, all. I'm sorry I'm very short. You may have a hard time seeing me. I should have brought a stool. In any case, thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Comptroller Lander. I'm really pleased to be here. I understand, having worked at DCAS and DSS for a number of years, that audit is actually very difficult, not just for programmatic folks, but also for finance folks. A lot of the demands that come from auditors relate to documentation that is accountancy based. And so, you're invaluable in that space too. So thank you very much for coming today and hearing me out. As we've discussed, we really want to bring a totally different approach to auditing. And so let me just talk very quickly about some of these things. So you are going to see a continued focus on fiscal integrity and on the identification of risk and efforts to mitigate that risk. That's integral to our process. It's part and parcel of our charter mission, and you won't see changes there. But you will see some new focus on, for example, equity, resilience, and preparedness. And when I talk about equity, we're talking about REI, of course, but beyond that, we're also looking at the standpoint of access to resources and to services. Are all communities within New York City served well, right? It's very important. And for some of those populations in New York City, in some neighborhoods, that's actually a very big challenge for the agencies and also for us. In terms of resilience, we're also looking very broadly at that from all aspects. Yes, we're looking at energy and climate change, but we also want to look at infrastructure. How well are we looking after our infrastructure? Is our infrastructure that's so valuable to us, that's integral to our ability to work and move in this city, being protected and cared for so that it will serve us in the future? Preparedness, I think coming off of the heels of COVID, I think it's fair to say that many agencies both struggled very, in difficult circumstances to stand up programs, and therefore, in some cases, faced audits with findings. But on the other hand, many of the agencies also very quickly ramped up and responded and learned a lot of lessons during that process. And so we want to highlight some of those lessons. How well did we do? What did we learn? So that we can go forward and meet those challenges as they come. New York City always has challenges in the form of disasters, pandemic, and so forth. And we want to be assured that we can meet them. You will also see greater participation of end users. Auditors have a tendency to focus on objective facts and data, but it's also important to consult with the end users of our services, right? How do they view the programs? How do they view the agency services? Where would they like us to focus audits? So we will be reaching out to consumers and residents of New York, both in terms of setting our objectives for audits and also during the audit process as part of testing. In terms of approach, as the comptroller spoke to, we really want to take a more collaborative approach to finding solutions. The reality is that while we are oversight, we have a very shared interest with agencies in ensuring that New York City government works. We feel very strongly that the better way to go is to work collaboratively with agencies to actually have conversations about our findings and about our recommendations to ensure that they are feasible, that they can in fact be implemented, and that they are meaningful, right? I have seen a lot of audits in my time, not just from the comptroller's office, but from other oversights that have tended to focus on minutia. We would like to move away from some of that minutia, away from looking purely at compliance, looking more closely at outcomes, and making sure that when we make a recommendation, it is something that potentially assists the agency, the program, and also the end users. So that's a slightly different approach, I feel, than has been taken in the last couple of years in particular. One of the things that you are going to see as we go forward is more frequent follow-up on recommendations. For an audit to have an impact, it's not enough to make the press. It also has to result in meaningful recommendations that are actually adopted by the agencies and by the programs and fully implemented. The reality is we don't have enforcement authority. We can't force an agency or a program to adopt a change. But we hope that as we engage in this conversation and this more collaborative approach, you will find that our recommendations are actually helpful and that you are willing to implement them. So we will be tracking them. We will be reaching out several times a year to find out from the agencies where they are. We will also be paying attention when there are recommendations that are not agreed with. And I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of the recommendations tracker, which is now up and public facing. We will be updating this regularly for all audits that are released from January, that were released from January 1, 2022, so that we are keeping track. It's a very useful tool. It's very important that audits are actually resulting in change, and we feel that this is one of the best way to measure it. So you'll find that there's a screenshot of this, and there's also an address there so that you can access it from time to time if you'd like to. And, you know, I guess the closing slide is just my contact information. I'd like to invite you and your colleagues in the agencies during audits, before audits, after audits, to reach out and have a conversation. More than happy to hear from you. I think it's important that not only I, but also my team, my senior leadership team, are visible to the agencies so that you do have an outlet if there is a bona fide disagreement that you would like to take up the chain. Please reach out. I'm here and look forward to hearing from you. So before I close, I would just like to introduce my team. I've got 3 of my senior managers here with me. Peggy Horning, who's the Assistant Controller of Finance. Many of you may have met her before. She has been with the agency a very long time. In fact, all 3 have. Edward Carey, who's the Assistant Controller for Management Audits. And also Marianne Mullaney, who's the newly appointed Director of Special Reports and Investigations. So again, I thank you very much for your attention today, and I hope that this is the beginning of a new approach to audit, not just on our side, but also on the side of the agencies. Please do reach out. Thank you so much.
Well, that was great. When I tell you Maura is brave to put her contact information up there, and I know you all are like texting your folks or get this. But this is what I mean by new approach, new vision, right? This collaboration effort is definitely what this administration is all about. So as Maura mentioned, her and her team will be available. As you all know, in prior years, we have our inquiry tables along the side. The inquiry tables offer you an opportunity just to be able to put a face to the name from an email of whoever maybe you've been emailing constantly back and forth with questions. It also allows you the opportunity to ask your independent questions related specifically to what you or your team might be struggling with or where you need clarity. We're here for you. The FISA OPA team will be here as well if you have any technical questions on FMS. And we have the teams from the Bureau of Accountancy and OMB, who you'll hear from right now, and the Audit Bureau. So please, at the conclusion of today, make your way over to the tables. Definitely meet Maura. That way you can get started on a right foot here. That doesn't mean you'll have less findings and recommendations, but at least you'll be able to put a face to the name and say, okay, maybe I'll give this one a heads up. So definitely make that connection, build that relationship. So a good segue into who's coming up next. Our office just recently reissued Controller's Directive 21. Controller's Directive 21 is all about revenue monitoring. And who does not love revenue? That keeps us going, right? So especially with the focus of, FEMA grants and everything we've been receiving, federal and state aid, with respect to COVID and other great disasters that the city has endured, Sandy, you name it. The ability to be able to accurately report your revenue is so important, as all eyes are on the city. right? Everyone wants to know what you've received. And then once they know what you've received, they want to know, have you spent it? So the best way to pull all of that together is to reissue this directive here, which hopefully many of you have already taken a look at. But this is where it's located on our website. And I would point to the revision history, which is that last bullet. The revision history is a quick way just to see what has changed between the last version of the directive and this version. Just quickly, some highlights. We've put a lot more in there with respect to monitoring and agency holding codes, right? Definitely a lot more pressure on you with respect to writing down those prior year receivables. And supporting documentation is so important. It's not just an audit tool. It doesn't just help the auditors to understand what's happened, but it helps us to understand as we are applying the next level of approval to your documents, as we're reviewing the documents, it's helpful for us to see exactly what you're trying to accomplish with that FMS transaction. So that's just a little bit of what the directive is covering. I will not read it to you. It reads as a bedtime story, but if you are in the revenue area, this is important to you, so you'll love reading it. And with that, our office has been collaborating a lot with OMB. Their newly put together task force on grants led by Dan Hyman, who you'll hear from shortly. And so I know you've been seeing a lot of emails from the team. He's ready to get started. I'm going to bring Dan up here. He's ready. He popped up. He is ready to go. You've seen a lot of emails from the team, so I hope you're responding. When I see an email from Dan, I'm like, okay, I gotta sit down, get some tea, get some coffee, get some water, because I'm going to be here while reading this, because that's Dan email. But he means well, and he's all about accountability, and we value our relationship with OMB. So please put your hands together and welcome Dan Hyman to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's glad to be here. I've heard about this conference for decades, I think. It's not exactly what I pictured. I pictured a lot of more seats being filled in, but I guess next year, we're back to a better new normal. We can do that. I was chatting with someone from FISA OPA this morning. We realized it's the first time since the pandemic we've had a tie-up. So I came in and I saw that Jackie, as always, is very hospitable, has all this food there. Look at my COVID-15, say maybe next year. So I'm looking forward to basically giving you a brief introduction to what our group does as the opening act before we get to the Bureau of Accountancy main event. And I think if you're not related to the revenue side or the grant side, I'm sorry, not everyone can be in the good part of the organization. But hopefully if you are, or if you basically are supervising people who do that, some of this will seem very familiar to you, and hopefully we will be making it even better for you in the weeks and months to come. So what I'm going to cover today, is just give you a brief introduction to what our task force is and what it's all about. Highlight some of the things that Jackie has alluded to. I tend to send out messages, usually under the anonymous grant revenue. That's really me. Moniker. They're usually long, but they are meant to be helpful and useful for your agencies to do research to, as the controller has said, and as others have said, if we don't have the money coming in, we can't really fund and support these important programs. So we'll talk about the quarterly status reports that you have been seeing from us, and also sort of looking forward what we hope to do this year, switching more from the looking backwards and what's currently on the books to basically making sure that as we get to fiscal 23, we're ready to move forward. So with that, so our task force basically was formed. I'm not sure of the exact date. My former boss, who's now working for the controller office, could tell you the real date. But basically, I started in May, and we've been hiring since then. Some of the same challenges you probably have as far as getting people to want to work, getting through that pesky OMB PAR process. All those things affect us as well. But we are, nearly to the level we wanted to be. And basically the objective when we started, and continues to be the objective, is to accelerate other people's money being used to pay for the services we need to deliver. I guess technically, much of the tax money coming from the federal government and the state really is New York City tax money anyways. It just got a roundabout way to get back to us. But we really want to make sure that we encourage people to get grants from federal, state, and non-governmental sources, that when they get the grant, though, let's make sure that those promises, those commitments that the grantor nicely gave to us, that we really are getting those dollars in. You know, it's nice that we got a promise that someone's going to fund something. If we don't actually get the cash at the end of the day, then it's really city taxpayers who are paying for it until we do. So it's not just getting it in, period, it's getting it in faster. You know, that basically means don't wait till you're in month 13 until you're at the end of the year to decide now's the time I'm going to ask for the money. Ask for the money when you're allowed to ask for the money, when you have the supporting details. It's the same amount of work conceptually, and it really takes some of the burden off the things that you would normally be doing in the summer. So part of what you've probably seen from us is accelerating some of the things that you would normally have done starting next month into things that you were already now well along the way for. But I guess we'll see as you get to month 13 whether that actually worked or not. But the other thing that we are trying to do sort of more, same way that Maura was talking about, if there are things we're seeing, if there are problems, if there are issues we're seeing in one agency or two agencies, we want to make sure that we, take those good ideas and make sure that other agencies are aware of that. If there's some, technique or internal workbook or spreadsheets that, agencies have alerted us to that they find useful, that we want to make sure that we share that. Conversely, if there's information that, we have that agencies would like to get distributed more routinely, we've been doing that. We will be working with FISA to basically make sure that some of that information comes through to you, but really it's making sure that we are working together and basically doing the job, as the controller correctly said, the behind the scenes people that are really the ones keeping the city moving. The revenue side, of course, is more important than the spending side in my group, but we all need to work together to get this to happen. Within my group, I have 3 units. There's 2 of them, 2 grant monitoring units, as you can see from the slides. Members of the units are sitting over there at the window, the inquiry window, so you can stop by later and put names to faces as time permits. And I also have the data and systems units, who's not here today because they're trying to make things better for moving forward. So just to recap what you probably have seen from us, starting, I think it was September or October, right after the close last year, we actually took to heart the Directive 21, the old Directive 21, sorry, the one that was in effect until last Friday. And so we looked at what was in there and we said, wait a minute, the agencies have just gone through a process. They just did their certification through the close. It was all electronic, obviously, because, the pandemic. But we said, let's take that information and use that just as a simple starting point to make sure that we understand where there might be issues or concerns or risks. So I guess in annual report talk, that's the G1, right? Did I get that right? So we really focused on the G1 and saying, okay, there's some receivables out there that have been out there for, a couple of years. Well, to me, the longer stuff is outstanding, the more concerned I get. Do I have an issue with a grantor not fulfilling their commitments to the city? Do I have an issue where supporting documentation wasn't available, so the grantor is not paying it? What are the reasons? So we started focusing on that, and we sent out to each of the contacts in every agency with grants anyways. Here's what we think is on file for you. Please just give us an update. Very simply, well, I don't know if it's simple, but basically the objective was, if you have something that you have billed from a grantor, so an FMS speak, you've done an RE for it, when do you expect to be paid? Is there an issue? Is there something that we need to engage the law department or someone else in to make sure that this money that you're expecting actually shows up? And so the REs, again, some of them I know there's a reconciliation process, particularly if you're dealing with the state, it tends to take longer than other places. But in other cases, one of the things we got back on the initial status reports were, oh, we forgot about that. We had, transition during the pandemic. We lost track of that. Let's call up the grantor. And sure enough, the cash shows up. So to some degree, it was really just making sure we had an inventory of what was out there. The UREs, the unbilled revenues, which you typically do during month 13, those were similarly, when are you expecting to actually have sufficient information to actually claim that money, to get reimbursed for that money? And so again, the same kind of concern. If it's last year's URE, expenses are probably still rolling in depending on what your program was. And so we know that that's something that sometimes takes a while. When more or less do you think that's going to happen? And then the same kind of thing, as we look further and further back, we start to wonder, well, It's 2 years ago, it's 3 years ago, it's 6 years ago. It's still not claimed. Is there a problem here? And so that's the kind of information that, agencies in many cases had to go outside of their normal accounting group, out to the field, out to the program managers and get more information about what was going to happen. So there's a lot of research that was involved in it. All of that research is the same kind of things that historically, I guess, you've always done during the annual close. So I'm pretty sure Jackie's not going to let you not do the research during the annual close. But the good news is you've now done this with us anyways for the last 9 months. A lot of the research has already been accomplished. There's some things I know that individual agencies have reached out to their grantors or they're contacting various people just to confirm it. So the good news is you got a big jump start on what you're going to have to do during month 13 anyways. The third and final leg, which we only added more recently just because it was something that we were observing, was people losing track of cash receipts. I don't mean losing track in the sense that the money, fell off the desk or something. Clearly it's in the bank, it's been invested and so forth, but we had records of cash receipts that have been outstanding for some period of time. Coincidentally, we have receivables outstanding for some period of time. So one of the things we did based upon an agency suggestion was in the second round of the report process, we just started trying to list, here are cash receipts that actually have receivables open for them. Here are receivables that have cash receipts pending for them, in the interest of saying, oh, that's what happened to it. So again, the whole point was to make the data cleaner and more useful so that as you get to month 13 and all the other fun stuff that Jackie and her folks are going to talk about next, that this is less pressing, focus on closing 22, focus on putting your estimates in for 22, and basically use sort of what we have working with you, helped you research and let us know that there may be problems, you'll be much better off. For those small number of incidents where an agency has told us that they think there might be a problem, it's a, I don't know, 60 character field right now, so it just says it might be a problem. We've asked for supporting documentation. I think in the package, I'm pretty sure in the package, but if not, we can get it to you. There's what that supporting documentation needs are. It's not meant, well, with all due respects to the audit group who probably cares about this more than I do, it wasn't meant to be simply, we just need to have something on the record because someone's going to ask. It's actually to force people to think about, how did I get to this problem? Is this a grantor that basically I shouldn't be putting up money for because this grantor is not going to pay their bills? So their bills, our revenue. Is this a situation where I had a miscommunication between two different groups within my agency? Probably the most common example we've heard is one group who did the month 13 UREs was not being consulted, or information that what they did was not used by the group who actually did the claims. And so what would end up happening? You're all accountants here, so you should know the answer. If you put in a claim and you don't reference the accrual, well, one, it goes into the wrong fiscal year, which is not good. But the other thing is that unbilled receivable sits. The claim actually could get paid. The unbilled receivable is still on the books of the city. A double booking, I guess we could call it, or a bookkeeping error. Well, it's bad enough that it happened. How do we make sure that as we move forward, those communication lines are now in place? So this is not as much as we have this problem, we need to take some action with it. It's like, because we're seeing these problems, what do we do to our procedures? What do we do to our communications to make sure that we see less of them moving forward? So that's what it's really all about. As Jackie has said, for those of you who are not familiar with the little paperclip in FMS, you're going to be, because if you actually have known problems, you have done the research, we are really looking for the FMS document where you're requesting that adjustment to a prior year receivable to have the supporting detail in it so that we actually have it for the record. And that then goes through a process where we, working with the Bureau of Accountancy, see those when they come in. Hopefully you are talking regularly to your OMB agency task force representatives. They're the ones who understand the programs specifically that are out there. They want to make sure that they understand what's going to happen going forward. And then once they understand it, then it goes to our budget review group, who basically coordinates with Jackie exactly the timing of when all this stuff actually gets processed. So from your perspective as an agency, what you will probably see is I'm asking, well, we have already asked, if you have one of these known situations, we would really like you to get them into FMS so we could start the review process while we're in month 13. So that basically means, ideally, if you know that you've got a problem, particularly with general fund, for any of your receivables, go through the process, work with your task force, and get that started in FMS. Once it's in FMS, there's a process that we'll be going through the controller's office to get them processed, but they will stay out there until we get through that process. Don't think there was anything else on the past. Sounds for the future, the happy stuff. So what we're hoping to do in the future, as it says on the screens, is, I guess the next step is, one, you will, since you're so used to it now, you will again in July get a request for the quarterly status report. You will notice, for those of you who actually have read the new Directive 21, that it's remarkably like what the new Directive 21 was. I didn't even ask for royalties or anything on it, but basically it's a very similar process. What's in Directive 21, you could do at any time. You don't have to wait for month 13. You don't have to wait for me or my group to ask for an update. By going through, the last few months, we think there's gonna be a lot less things for us to ask you about because you've already cleaned it up. So what we really want to focus on is moving forward into fiscal 23. So the first step on that is you will be getting a information, I guess you call it a validation request from us, sharing with you what we at OMB think the information is for each grant. So I know you actually go through a process every year where you go into FMS budget and you put some information in. If you got a capital grant, you have to go through, the CGMS process to get your reporting. So we do have a lot of information. We just want to do a single snapshot to make sure that we've got the right information. One of the things we've noticed is we have, contacts for individual grants that retired from the city 6 years ago, because I knew some of them from seeing their names. So hopefully it's a simple exercise. We'll get all that. And then once we have that, we can use that to sort of more refine what we ask of you. So if you tell us or confirm for us that a particular grant program, a particular revenue structure is something that you're allowed to claim on quarterly, we hope to actually give you more alert type information saying, hey, you told us this claim could be done quarterly. We haven't seen one for 6 months. Is there an issue? Is there a par that's being held up for the person who does the claim? And so we're trying to make sure that as we move forward, that we provide more alerts, more information of what we could do for things that seem unusual. On the technology side, working with our friends at FISA, we also are looking, and we've heard suggestions for things that agencies would like to do more routinely or easier, I guess, than the way they have been doing it. There's various examples. There was a study that was done in January or last year, where basically many agencies were surveyed and sessions were held and some procedures were documented. But amongst the things that came out of that was, a need to have some additional reporting capabilities, not new data, just data that is already there, which is inconvenient. The most common one, if I recall, was we have a federal grant, and given the way the FMS process works, in order to get the information, we have to run a report twice because it's 2 different fiscal years. All right, well, that seems like something we could change. Let's let you specify date ranges and get the information for it. For things that are outstanding, such as the situation I said with the RE that didn't reference the URE, well, the existing reports only tell you the things that still open. If you didn't know what the document number was, it's hard to find. So we're looking to see if we can do reports. You can ask for both open and closed. So you can do better research. So that's basically dealing with the information that's already there. The other thing, which is sort of more of a vision thing at the moment, as you know, whether it's stimulus or other programs, it's often harder after the fact to figure out what the spending was for. Particularly if you're in a budget code that's got mixed sources of funding, it's a little bit of a forensic study after the fact to figure out, was this actually being funded by the grant? Or was this being funded by, well, in some cases, 2 different grants? So what we're looking at working with FISA is there are some capabilities within FMS accounting that we're looking to see whether that may actually be helpful and useful, so that agencies who want to record that additional information. So it's not the budget code, it's not the object, it's not the stuff you already typed. Use some additional fields and allow you to effectively tag a particular spending as being associated with a particular grant. And so that's sort of a vision thing. That's where we're trying to go. But again, it should be fun. And lastly, we are brand new, so we don't by any means know everyone in the city yet, although I feel like it after the number of calls I've been on over the last year. But if there are any questions or any suggestions you have, we do have our little inquiry table over here, so you can ask us here. You could also work with your agency task force. You know, we try to work with them. So just to be clear, we're not the ones who are approving your grants. You know, you're the same agency person who you submit your budget mods to and you submit your PAR request to. They're the same ones who basically you should be continuing to coordinate with. You know, we're the support for them, but we're also trying to be the support to you. You are out in the field, you're seeing things that are challenging, that may be hard. So feel free to basically give us those ideas. You know, we may not be able to do anything initially, but if you've got questions, you got ideas, you have things that work for you, we want to be sort of that repository that can share it to all the agencies that have grants so that we can all collectively work better. And, you know, to the point from the earlier speakers, we really want to be able to fund all the things the city needs to do. Using grant funding to do that is the best of all worlds. And so that's really what we intend to do. I didn't put my name and phone number on here. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was the standard, but I did put sort of this anonymous email there, which is really me. But that way you can reach us. But when I do send out emails, it actually does put my name and phone number. So if you do want to call, feel free. And I want to thank Jackie and the Controller's Office for inviting us to be here as the warm-up act for the real show, which is all about the annual close. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dan, for coming through. And I did notice, I said, where's his name and his email address? I said, look at him hiding behind his grant revenue email. But let me just move on so we can get to nuts and bolts of today. You all notice you have your folders, everything is in there, the manual, etc. I want to step back and go over another directive that we reissued earlier this year in February. Directive 24 is on purchasing methods. This directive really expands the requirements with regards to appropriate usage of a PO11 document. This is your non-commodity purchase order. So if you missed that directive, go through our website, take a look at it. I know this would reduce a lot of the directive waivers we've been receiving over the years. So trust me, you want to take a look at this if you have not done so already. Just to give you a heads up of what's coming up in this next fiscal year, we are taking a look at Directive 10 and 30 for multiple reasons. One of them particularly because, of course, there's a new governmental accounting standard that we need to implement next year. And that is statement number 96, and that is on subscription-based IT arrangements. I will not talk about that right now because there's someone else coming to talk about it. So we'll be taking a look at Directives 10 and 30 to make a few tweaks to it. For those of you who have such arrangements, so be on the lookout for that. And we'll definitely, of course, need your help because we like to post certain directives, especially 10, up for comment, because hearing back from you actually helps us to know, well, are we putting something in here that's really going to deter you from getting, doing your job and being able to provide the necessary services that you need to. So definitely take a look at that. Next, I'm going to show you this because I know you've been hearing us say ACFR and this, and you're like, what are they talking about? So earlier we mentioned the annual comprehensive financial report, which is formerly known as the comprehensive annual financial report. So you're saying to yourself, well, they just switched the word around. What's the big deal? Actually, this was a universal change. And this is through a governmental accounting standards board statement 98. Apparently, the acronym for the comprehensive annual financial report, when it's said aloud, it nearly it's a racial slur, an offensive racial slur in South Africa. And so the GASB took immediate notice, made the change. We immediately implemented last fiscal year end. And so that's where the name change comes from. So I don't want you to think that we just decided and we woke up one day and said, let's flip it around and see if anybody notices. No, it's a real change and it's done universally. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Now I'm going to get into the manual shortly, and the great team of the Bureau of Accountancy is going to come up here shortly and go through a few sections. But here are the sections that will not be discussed today, not because they're not important. Everything is equally important. However, there are certain sections that we feel requires more emphasis, whether maybe we've seen some issues or some misconceptions in the past. We want to make sure that we bring those items directly to you today. So although these topics will not be discussed today, they are in your manuals. And again, we have the inquiry tables for those specific areas. So if there's a direct question that you have, and even for those watching online, you have our contact information within the manual itself. So please utilize that. And I am going to stop talking right now. The folks that are coming up here to present, notice it's not going to be presented in the order that you see in the manual, but at the same time, you'll be able to follow along with them. This is where you'll find everything from today up on our website. Okay, so if you misplace the folder, which I hope you don't, I hope you sleep with it and cuddle it or something at night. But, you know, this is where you'll find everything that you need for fiscal year end. The manual is posted on this website. It's broken out by sections. If you don't need the whole section and you just do Impress Fund, then print out or click Impress Fund. All the downloadable forms are on the website as well. And we'll have the recording of today posted as well. So for those in your office that could not make it, and you just want to constantly hit rewind and hear me say, meet the deadline, meet the deadline, meet the deadline, go ahead and do that. Make it your ringtone if you need to. But you know, it's there for you to access. Hopefully next year we can be back in full effect. I know prior to COVID, we've been here 500 plus, filling up this auditorium. But next year, hopefully we'll be back stronger and bigger than ever. Today, it's a nice intimate setting, and this is the new normal of intimacy. And so it's nice to see you all. But there's where you'll find everything on our website. So time for me to move along and get off the stage so that you can hear from the great folks within the Bureau of Accountancy. We have Minyu Chen. She's our newest supervisor, recently promoted as supervisor of the Revenue Monitoring Unit, and she is handling like a pro. Minyu is great, and we're honored and so glad to have her. So please put your hands together and welcome Minyu Chen.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good morning, everyone. As Jacqueline mentioned, my name is Minyu Chen. I'm the Unit Chief of Revenue Monitoring Units. Today, I will be covering two topics: general and capital fund revenue and single audits. Let's start with general and capital fund revenue, which could be found on Section C of the Posting Instruction Manual. I'll give you a moment to find it. September 9 is the last day to book any fiscal year 22 receivable and to process any fiscal year 22 revenue realization, as well as the last day to return revenue certification letter. Please try to not submit your documents by September 9, as we have to review them. The earlier you submit your documents will allow us more time to review the documents and communicate with you before the deadline if we have any questions. Directive 21 compliance. As Jacqueline mentioned earlier, Directive 21 has been updated and could be downloaded from the controller's website. We will be in contact with you more frequently to ensure that we are all complying with the provision of the Directive 21. Some of you already received report that our office sent last Friday for the listing of open cash receipt pertaining to revenue source 7900. If you have any question related to this communication, please feel free to reach out to us. We will be communicating with you in timely manner. Changes to the year-end revenue certification process. In prior years, only general fund revenue and receivable report were included in the sign-off certification. This year, we will be adding the capital fund expense and revenue report to the sign-off certification as well. Please be mindful to review your capital fund revenue in the same level as you review your general fund revenue. Among these reports, the audit reports of our year realization, also known as the REF PYA report, we will be adding one column, agency comment / explanation at the end of this report for you to provide status and feedback. As you have been updating OMB with your outstanding grant receivable and unapplied cash received quarterly, you can use the research you've done for OMB to prepare for our revenue certification. Let's move on to the common oversight to avoid. I have highlighted a few items that agency oversighted or skipped in the past. I know you're already aware about this item. I just wanted to mention it here. Take this opportunity to mention it and talk about it again as a friendly reminder. During the month of July through September, we have 2 fiscal years open. If you don't specify period 13 on your document, the revenue realization will be processed in fiscal year 23. Please be careful when you're entering period on your document during the 1st to 10th of July when there are 3 periods are open, which is period 12, period 13 of fiscal year 22, and period 1 of fiscal year 23. The original budget fiscal year should never be manually changed. When you create a document for realizing revenue, the budget fiscal year will infer from the receivable documents when you enter the receivable document ID as a reference. When you enter new or modification document, please ensure to include your name, phone number, and email address in the document. This way, we know who to reach out to if we have any question during our review. Explanation is needed for all revenue documents, but extremely important for modification documents. An explanation for what is being modified should always be stated in the header section of the document. Last but not least, supporting documentation should always be attached to the document for ease of review and to provide an audit trail. Now that we have discussed general and capital fund revenue, let's talk about another topic, single audit, which could be found on section G of the closing instruction manual. Oh. Excuse me. Again, I'll give you a moment to find it. As we did in prior years, we will be adding 2 columns to the FEDESC report. One column for the pass-through grantor contract or identification number, herein referred to as an ID number. And the other column is for the total amount passed through to subrecipient by assistance listing number, formerly known as the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, CFDA. Couple items to know while reviewing the FEDESC report. The pass-through grantor contract or ID numbers are the number that the pass-through grantor assigned to your agreement with them. For example, if you receive federal grant money through a New York State agency, that contract number assigned to that agreement with the state should be indicated in this column of the FEDESC report. If there are multiple contract or ID numbers associated with a particular assistant listing number, please be sure to list them all in this column as well. In regards to federal grant money being passed through to subrecipient, this is the case in where a city agency passed federal grant money to an external party. You will report the total liquidated amount that you actually paid out to subrecipient during fiscal year 22 by assistant listing number on the FedESD report. Although we don't need the level of details for each of the amount that were passed through to a subrecipient, you should retain supporting documentation readily available in case questions arise during the audit. If you have any question related to these two topics, please feel free to email us. I will be in the revenue and single audit table after the closing instruction. Please don't forget to stop by to ask questions, to say hi, or to networking. I'll be happy to see you there. Thank you very much for being here today. I look forward to work with you. Have a happy end of fiscal year. Now I would like to introduce the next presenter, Marina Verba.
Thank you, Minium. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marina Verba, the Division Chief of Bank Reconciliations, and today I'm going to go over agency bank accounts. This year, we will be distributing active bank account report and agency representation letter via email on July 1st. As usual, our distribution list is based on the contact information that you provided during the agency assignment reach out conducted in April. If there have been any changes, please see me at the inquiry table later to confirm the information. Some reminders for your submissions. Please be sure to fill out active bank account report legibly and submit all items electronically in PDF format by the deadlines provided in the manual. Banking FTP remains a preferred method of submission. Please remember to email a notification to the agency bank account email address after you upload the documents. Make sure that your submissions comply with Controller's Directive 11. All reconciliations must be reviewed and signed by the supervisor. Electronic signatures are acceptable for certification of reconciliations, as well as other documents submitted to our office. In the reconciliation, there should be no variance between the adjusted book and adjusted bank balances. And the last reminder, J2I entries will need to be submitted in FMS for all expense demand accounts. Those accounts are referenced as ED on the active bank account report. Please make sure that FMS Level 3 approval is applied to the documents prior to submitting to our office for review. It has been 2 years since our in-person closing instructions meeting, and I wanted to thank you all for staying in contact and for doing a great job of submitting everything on time. We really appreciate it, as timely submissions and resolving outstanding items is crucial at year end, when we have to comply with closing deadlines and ensure that the city's cash is reported accurately. I look forward to productively work with you during this fiscal year close. Thank you all again. And let me introduce our next speaker, Ahmad Ali.
Thank you, Marina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ahmad Ali, and I'm the Unit Chief for Ledger Maintenance. I'll briefly be going over some important information as it relates to Impress Fund, inventory, and designated funds. The Impress Fund Accountability Reports. Your Impress Fund Accountability Reports are due by July 29th. The last day to process PR1s for fiscal year 22 is July 8th. Please note that you should not process any fiscal year 23 PRR1s until our team has approved your accountability report for this year. We have faced some challenges in the past with this project when it comes to your submissions. An important point to note, Stale, void, and canceled checks should not be included as outstanding checks on the bank reconciliation, as this causes an incorrect adjusted book balance as of June 30th. For the next two items, let's take a look at the screen which currently has worksheet C displayed. As you can see, there are certain cells that are highlighted in yellow. These cells contain formulas, so we ask that you please not modify these cells or make any manual entry into these cells. I would like to now direct your attention to the bottom of the worksheet, specifically row C8 or cell C8. The amount in this cell is auto-populated after your entries in the workbook. And this amount should also match the amount of your J2I document in FMS. These issues and other issues can be avoided, and we strongly encourage teams that are working on this project to look over the instructions that are provided in the accountability workbook and also are provided in the manual that you have received today. Next topic. Inventory of supplies. Your inventory submissions are due by July 15th. We understand that the pandemic created challenges related to your inventory reporting tasks and required some flexibility on our parts when accepting your submissions. Now that most of us are back in the offices full time, it is our expectation that the inventory counts are done in person. However, if you still face any difficulty in conducting a physical count, please reach out to our team for guidance. Agencies having less than $5,000 in inventory are not required to report, but must confirm this information via email to us. Please note that you should submit separate forms for your capital inventory and your expense inventories. Moving on to the last topic. Designated fund certifications. The comptroller's website has the most current version of the form in the closing instructions section. The link to this section has also been provided to you on the first page of the manual that you have received today. This form should be utilized when certifying all your active accounts. Please note that no fiscal year 22 transactions are allowed after July 8th. If you're requesting any new accounts or closing any inactive accounts, please utilize the forms in Directive 27 found on the comptroller's website. Furthermore, for any new accounts, please utilize the flow chart in Directive 27 to determine the type of account. Your certifications for your designated funds are due by July 15th for all your active accounts. Last Friday, we sent out emails with information regarding Impress Fund accountability reports, inventory of supplies, and designated fund certifications. If you are working on any of these projects and you did not receive the emails, please visit our table located on your left side, and we have a sign-in sheet where you can provide your contact information, and we will be glad to forward the emails to you. Or you can always reach us via email for those that are watching live. Thank you for making last year's closeout successful, and we look forward to another great year. I would like to now introduce our next presenter, Jessica Sanchez.
Thank you, Amide. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Sanchez, and I'm the Unit Chief of Capital and Fixed Assets. I will be covering the capital sections of the manual, sections H, I, and J. In regards to capital projects expenditure accruals, section H, please be mindful of the dates indicated in the manual for payment requests being processed during periods 12 and 13 for fiscal year 22. In sections I and J, the capital accounting records reconciliation and the capital assets certification attest to agency compliance with Controller's Directive 1. As you are aware, agencies are required to reconcile internal records to FMS accounting for the unencumbered balance of each unit of appropriation, contract liability, and capital asset liability, respectively.
Please run the reports and provide the certifications as indicated in sections I and J. A few reminders about capital cutoff dates. As part of the closing process for FY '22, capital documents must be approved final with the exception of the fixed asset intent and fixed asset modification documents, FN and FM. We ask that if you have documents currently pending level 3, to please either approve them or if not needed, discard them. The capital cutoff date for FY '22 is July 29th. After this date, there should be no pending documents in FMS waiting for level 3 or 5 approval. We appreciate your cooperation in this effort, as any pending or rejected documents, except FN and FM, that reference existing assets will cause those assets not to be depreciated or revaluated. The mass depreciation and revaluation event is scheduled for July 30th, 2022. A reminder about fixed asset dispositions, the FD document. Please make sure that FD documents are entered by July 29th, including the reason for the disposition and the extended document description. For impairments, please remember that this is a year-round responsibility for all agencies. Agencies are responsible for testing and documenting the tests performed. Please have all required backup documentation available, as this is a recurring audit request. For more information, please see Directive 30. The final topic that I will speak to is Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 96, or GASB 96, regarding subscription-based information technology arrangements, also known as CIBITA. The city will be implementing GASB 96 for our fiscal year 23 annual financial statement. With that in mind, OMB and the Comptroller's Office have created new object codes to track CIBITA-related projects and liquidations. Object code 221 is for capital-only CIBITA projects that are fully funded with capital. An example of these costs are those associated with cloud system build-out and coding. Object code 222 is for the capital portion of a split-funded CIBITA project that involves both capital and expense. Object code 603 is for both the expense side of a split-funded CIBITA project and for projects solely funded by expense. An example would be costs associated with pre-development stage and training manuals. These codes have been included in Appendix 1 of the manual for your reference. If you have any questions about any of these topics or about anything capital related, please feel free to reach out by email or to stop by the capital inquiry table. Thank you. This concludes the closing instructions walkthrough. And now I'd like to turn it back to Jacqueline Thompson.
Thanks so much, Jessica, and thank you, Bureau of Accountancy, for walking us through all of the important elements for this year's close. So this is the end, but for some of us, just the beginning, right? The year end has started, and now we got to get busy. So I'd like to just thank everyone here, but most of all, thank Yvonne Jeffers, our Bureau Coordinator, for helping to put all of this together. And everyone, of course, my great team at the Bureau of Accountancy. Love you guys. This is an awesome team of individuals that is committed to serving the city and accounting expertise. So thank you all for joining us here today. Looking forward again to seeing you next year.